Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's discussion. I'm Kim Turner, and I'm delighted to be hosting Linda from Johnson & Johnson. Today, Linda will be sharing how Johnson & Johnson linked ideation challenges to their corporate strategy and how they track ideas through to implementation. I think you'll find it especially interesting how they're measuring value. As the provider of the idea management solution that supports these efforts, it's always exciting for us to see the outcomes that our customers are driving. So before we start, a little bit about us. Spigit enables organizations to leverage and engage employees, partners, suppliers, and customers to create and manage a pipeline of ideas. These ideas ultimately translate into initiatives that drive new business strategies, new product development, operational efficiencies, and employee engagement. Spigit enables business leaders to find the best ideas and foster a culture of innovation. Spigit's the largest provider of idea management solutions, serving some of the world's foremost and recognizable organizations. And as such, we've launched more than 14,000 challenges across many industries and geographies. What's exciting about this is how it translates not only into a level of expertise that is highly valued by our customers, but also into a vast innovation community of which customers like Linda are a part. So on that note, I'm delighted to turn it over to Linda to share her experience with leveraging idea challenges to meet organizational goals. Linda?
Thank you, Kim. And I'd like to thank everyone online for joining me this afternoon to talk about our journey with working beyond ideation. But I'd like to start first by sharing a personal story with you that I believe relates to what we're going to discuss this afternoon. I'm the proud mother of two amazing children. My oldest, Bill, just graduated from Army Ranger School in March of this year. Bill graduated from Boston College last May and received an ROTC scholarship for his 4 years of education, which was a total game changer for his father and myself. And so therefore he owes 4 years of active duty in the Army. And because Bill had 4 years of leadership training, weekend missions, a couple days a week of PT, he was considered an Army infantry soldier when he reported for active duty at Fort Benning on July 5th, 2017. But what we quickly learned is that although you might be a soldier, you're not considered a leader or given a command until you have earned your Ranger tab. So to earn this tab, you must successfully complete a 3-phase program where you live mostly outdoors, train for sometimes 23 hours straight, and given minimal food, horrible conditions. However, it is relatively quick, 61 days in total if you don't recycle, which means not passing one of those phases and having to start it over. And some soldiers take up to 7 months to complete. Well, I'm very proud to say that my son was one of the 10% that made it through in the 61 days. Good for mom, for sure. He's really tough. But what I'm going to present to you this afternoon is similar in the way that we take ideas at Johnson & Johnson Supply Chain and we bring them to life by putting them through something like Ranger School was for my son. Intense, relatively quick, but effective in making the idea as transformational as possible. So just in case you haven't heard of Johnson & Johnson or maybe don't know the breadth of what we offer, I thought I would start with some facts. We were founded over 132 years ago by the Johnson brothers who set up shop on the banks of the Raritan River in New Brunswick, New Jersey, where our headquarters is currently located. We employ 134,000 employees in 260 operating companies across the globe and are organized in primarily 3 segments. Consumer, where you're probably most likely to experience a J&J product like Band-Aids or baby products. Our pharmaceutical group, known as Janssen Pharmaceutical, and medical devices, including surgical instruments, hips, knees, contact lenses, to name a few. And overall, our sales in 2017 was $76.5 billion. I am part of the supply chain organization made up of plan, source, make, and deliver, taking the products that R&D develops and figuring out how to manufacture them and deliver them to our customers. So J&J has really had a long-standing relationship with innovation, even though innovation seems like such a current buzzword. And I put these examples together to show you just a few products that may not seem very innovative now, but were considered huge innovations for their time. Some of these might be surprising to you, some not. For example, I was wondering how many people knew that J&J was responsible for duct tape, which is something that I found out when I was researching for this presentation. So what or why is innovation important today? Well, healthcare access has changed. There has been lots of changes over the past few years, and it's happening very quickly. So healthcare has changed from having to visit the doctor in person or having laboratory tests performed in the lab offices to more digital systems that allow the consumer to provide their health data in real time and without disruption to their day, or to even monitor their own health data before needing to go to the doctor. You know, of course, businesses have changed from an industrial focus to more of a service focus. The way we work has changed from career-long employee loyalty to a freelance economy, which has also seen changes in where we work. How many of you work in an office environment or are actually working out of your homes today? And who has teams that are based only in the US? So we have to be very innovative in the way we get work done. And of course, the rise of consumerism. We have all devices that empower users with more access to data than ever before. Everyone has a smartphone or a smartwatch, and it's just as easy to access healthcare information, as it is to hail a cab or do banking online. So expectations have really changed, and this is what people are demanding. So at J&J, we are constantly asking ourselves, how can we provide innovative solutions in this fast-paced, changing healthcare environment? So we started with discovering methods of generating ideas, and these are just a few. We have design thinking within our meetings. We have focused workshops on design thinking. One of those workshops includes something called our Faster Forward immersion, which is really about our strategy and changing the mindset of our people to be able to live into the strategy. Expert Connect is something that takes advantage of the 134,000 employees we have to solve problems, quick problems. We host TEDx events where people can share their own personal stories about innovation. We host hackathons, again, to solve some strategy issues. And we also do use crowdsourcing and crowdsourcing challenges. And this is where we were introduced to Spigit. We have been very successful with Spigit in the crowdsourcing area. J&J Consumer Make, our manufacturing group and consumer, led by Christian Way, led the way in crowdsourcing for J&J supply chain in 2016. He has been very successful with this approach to fulfilling cost improvement commitments required by the company. He has teams across 30 manufacturing plants running challenges in 14 different languages, and they have generated over 500 ideas. So all this is very exciting, except for the fact that, how do we know what happens to these ideas? So we have used the obvious, Excel spreadsheets, maybe SharePoint. Every person I have spoken to about how they keep track of the results of their ideation events used one of these two vehicles. So we decided to do something different. We had a challenge from our management around that same time, asking these questions. What ideas do we have that align with our strategy? What ideas do we have in our innovation pipeline? What ideas in this innovation pipeline have become successful projects? What are others in supply chain doing in this innovation space? And how long does it take an idea to be realized into a successful project? So in a nutshell, we were being asked, how are we measuring the value of our innovation efforts? So what was our solution to this? Well, we created Fast Track Ideas to enable us to answer all of those questions. So what is Fast Track Ideas? Well, here's the formula. Like all good scientists, we started with creating a process, and we took our process and placed it on the Spigit platform and created an ecosystem of communities within supply chain for greater flexibility while still following the standard process. We wanted to build a process that others in supply chain could follow to ensure we could not only track ideas, but be able to take them from being ideas resulting in maybe incremental innovation to ideas resulting in more transformational innovation. I will walk through the process in more detail in a few minutes, but here you can see the traditional Spigit phases of submission, collaboration, and expert review. But we have added steps called concept, exploration, pilot, implementation, and closeout. And of course, at the end of the process, we have many brilliant ideas. And take note that some of these brilliant ideas are of different sizes, so not all of them will be transformational. So within Johnson & Johnson supply chain, we set up a community model to most effectively utilize fast-track ideas. Each community is structured to be able to host their own time-bound and always-on challenges under their own governance model. And the benefits include scalability. It's very easy to add new communities. Visibility, we share the central repository of ideas so we can see what others are doing within supply chain. Role-based, what we call triggers. We have a core working group that reviews all the information coming out of our concept step to be alerted for those ideas that link to the strategy, as well as those that may need a little help with funding. Portfolio management. Through reporting, we are able to understand what ideas are in the portfolio and where they are in the process. And ideally, we want this to be a relatively quick process, so we have target times for the ideas to move through each step. Targeted collaboration. By establishing communities, we foster collaboration across the various groups within Johnson & Johnson. But sponsors within each community can choose topics that align to their organizational strategy and pain points. And of course, best practice and idea sharing. So here's our process in more detail, and I've left out what we consider our step one, which is the traditional Spigit challenge. So this starts after the winning ideas have been chosen. Here we look at parts of the strategy, and in concept, we look at the parts of the strategy that the idea aligns with, where this idea can be applied within Johnson & Johnson, and potentially be driven by, because we are segmented into consumer, pharma, and medical device. And just because an idea came out of one of those segments doesn't necessarily mean that it's only applicable to that segment. It might be something that we could use across the enterprise. We ask for an initial cost estimate, mostly to provide visibility to management about bigger innovations that might require additional funding. And we start to ask some design thinking questions like, is it desirable? Does anybody really want this idea? Do we think it's feasible to do and make, or is it viable from a business perspective? If it makes it past the concept step, it goes into something called exploration. And to me, this is kind of where the magic happens. We get a lot more into the design thinking piece of this. We ask for benchmarking to ensure this isn't being worked on elsewhere in the company, or to gain insights for those who have worked on this outside of Johnson & Johnson. We have discussions with extreme users, those who might be very familiar with the topic of the idea, and those who are not familiar at all, to get those kind of extreme viewpoints to really stretch the idea. And then we experiment to test assumptions that we have made about this idea and how successful it could be. So it's really a test and learn. If the idea progresses through exploration, we might choose to perform a mini pilot where we're really building to learn. We're going to test prototypes with prospective users to gain further insights on the idea, and maybe have to take it back to exploration and work on it some more, but pilot, we're testing it out with the users. If the idea makes it this far in the process, it's ready to be implemented as a project. So up to this point, it is still an idea, not a project. The information that we've collected thus far is written into a business case, and we obtain approval. And once it is approved, it's entered into our project management database and supply chain. The final step is closeout, and that helps us to close the loop and have metrics around the impact of fast-track ideas on the success of a project, as well as the success of our innovation efforts. So at Johnson & Johnson Supply Chain, we refer to FTI, or fast-track ideas, as the Johnson & Johnson Supply Chain way to bring innovative ideas to life with visibility, speed, and passion for our customers. And by using this system, we are able to measure value. We can now answer those questions that management had for us now almost 18 months ago. What ideas do we have that align with our supply chain strategy? Well, now we are looking at reports on what are our North Star and foundational pillar ideas from the concept step. What ideas do we have in our innovation pipeline? We can look at the ideas that are now in our repository, and we're also tracking ideas at each step or stage in our process. What ideas have become successful projects? Now we can look at ideas that have reached closeout. What are others in supply chain doing in the innovation space? Again, we can look at that repository content in Fast Track Ideas, and we also have a metric around diversity of challenge participation. So we're looking for participation in our challenges beyond the organization that the topic pertains to or the community that the topic was run in. And how long does it take an idea to be realized? We are measuring time and stage, so we can track how fast we move through this process. So the metrics we are tracking are all leading indicators of measuring revenue, growth, and profitability. And right now we're kind of in the beginning of this journey, but I'm confident that I can do a webinar maybe next year with some great results to share. So thank you very much for joining me, and I will take any questions that you have.
We know from our experience that having a culture of innovation is very important to the success of such programs. Can you speak, now that you have some years under your belt, to maybe some of the early experiences or challenges that you had around culture of innovation and how things that you've done to overcome them?
Sure. I think for us it was two things. One was a lot of people, when you talk to them about building a culture of innovation, they talk about not having time to innovate. And, you know, I think what we have done here with Fast Track Ideas is shown people that you really don't need a lot of time to innovate. It's a mindset. So we've kind of focused on design thinking and built that into the tool, but also just even using the crowdsourcing step one, that doesn't take much time. It really doesn't. It's fun. It's an exciting way to kind of bring people together around innovation. And then by having a relatively quick process to kind of build those ideas out, it also shows that it really doesn't take a lot of time to build that culture of innovation and to bring ideas along the innovation process. I think the other challenge we had was we were really excited and had a lot of participation around generating ideas, and then when it came to developing them out a little bit and tracking them is where we kind of lost interest or didn't have any way to do it that worked for us. And that's where Fast Track Ideas also meets that need, because that provides a way to do both. We can track ideas as they move through the process and also as they move through our project management process. And it also gives us a way to apply some of those principles that we're learning, like design thinking and others, that we can build out the ideas to be as transformational as possible.
So you've been running Fast Track Ideas for over a year now. For someone who's just starting an innovation program, what advice would you give to them based on your experience?
Sure. I would say think about your organization and how to best utilize a system to help foster and track innovation. I mean, for us, it works to have individual communities that have their own governance structure. We felt that in this way, they feel like they own innovation as well. It's not that, oh, there's that central innovation group within supply chain. They own innovation. I'm just participating. So, there's ownership there. They are also able to structure some of the challenges around their own organizational strategy. And what's really key to our innovation strategy is that it aligns to our larger supply chain and then our larger J&J innovation or in strategies, which include innovation. We have a pillar on innovation. So I think having communities for us was the way to go. And I lead a core working group with all the community leads. And right now we only have 4 communities. We don't have a lot. We're actually still deploying this. We're trying to take a very slow approach. But we sit as a core team for Fast Track Ideas, so we can kind of run the platform from there and kind of share best practices across communities.
So when it comes to the community model, did you always use that community model, or did you start with a centralized approach and then decentralize over time?
No, we started with a community model. There was a few early adopters, I would say, especially the consumer make group that had been using Spigit the longest for the crowdsourcing piece. So we added a few others who raised their hand and said, yeah, let's try this, let's do this. And so we've always kind of had that community model. As a platform leader, it's myself and one other person, my right-hand person. That's it from a platform lead. So, and it's not our full-time job.
That's a really important point to make in terms of what kind of resource it takes to be able to administer such a program.
Yeah, we make sure that we give people the tools and templates they need and provide, a resource if they need it, but also try to train and teach them to fish. So teach others to be able to run the challenge and work with the process by themselves.
That's great. When you think about how your program has evolved over time, can you characterize what some of your early ideation challenges were versus how they've evolved to more current ideation challenges?
Sure. And we launched this literally last July, with our first challenges being in September, October. So I don't feel like I'm quite there with a year, but our early ones, and I would say they were almost pilot ones in the last fall, were we started small. Some of the challenges we ran were, maybe 100 people, a little bit larger than that, and but it helped us to get comfortable with it, and also kind of learn as we went. What worked, what didn't work. And then we've slowly gone to bigger challenges. I know I ran a challenge in our quality organization that was 10,000 people in January. And then we are running one right now for our sustainability group across J&J. So I know that was sent out to more than 10,000 people. So I think for sure the audiences or the crowds have gotten bigger for us. And also, I think we're more in line and asking better questions with our, of course, aligned to our strategy, but asking our challenge questions better than we did in the beginning. I think right now we're better about crafting a statement that gets to what the problem is, isn't too broad, but isn't too focused. I think there's like art and science with crafting the right challenge topic. So I would say we've gotten better at that over time as well.
And are the challenges, the ideation challenges that you're running, are they time-bound challenges? Can you speak to maybe how, what's the length of time for the ideation to selection, and then maybe what you're seeing from the timing on implementation or the back end of the process with fast track ideas?
Sure. So yes, right now they're all time bound. I think we're just starting to dip our toe into always on, because we know that there's a lot of governance that needed for that to make sure that doesn't become the kind of the dead letter box. So for the time bound challenges, I mean, typically our submission collaboration is 2-3 weeks, a week of expert review, a week of prioritization. We have all used prioritization. J&J seems to really like that. To bring the crowd back in, it's a little bit of fun. After that, we have what we've set out as guidelines for the other steps as to how long they should take. We were saying the concept step, which is really a big checklist, should not take longer than a week or two. Exploration, I think we said 3 weeks, and we're looking back now, and we've set it out as our goals this year just to monitor time and then make adjustments after we've been through this an entire year. Exploration's taken a little bit longer just because we're trying to get the right groups together, the right teams together to work on it, and being as big as we are and as global as we are, that we run into trouble just scheduling. So that's taking a little bit longer. And then most of us right now are either, I think we have one that's gotten to implementation. So, we only choose a couple winning ideas from each of the challenges. And right now, I'd say this past 6 months or so, I've been really just working on that middle piece, that concept exploration pilot, to see what's working, what's not working, and how long does it take.
That's great. And then you laid out in your presentation the questions you were being asked by leadership that drove your fast track ideas implementation, and that you're now able to measure value in those categories. How frequently are you sharing that information with your leadership team?
So actually, for the overall sponsor of this entire program, we have met quarterly to go over how we're doing and how we're growing, the platform as a whole. For individual ideas, that happens kind of sporadically as ideas and we reach that concept step and a trigger is triggered, either the cost or if it hits one of our what we call North Stars. We have 3 North Stars. Then we alert the owner of that strategy to let them know, okay, here's an idea, it's coming through, fast track ideas you might want to be aware of. So that happens like as the idea is hitting that step.
So when you think about your portfolio, do you have portfolios of ideas that map to each of those North Stars?
Yes, exactly.
That's great. And then you can see within each North Star what stage your ideas are in terms of concept validation or development, implementation. Is that how that works?
Yes, it is. It is. And we're getting to the point now that we're also thinking about either having communities around these North Stars or at least challenges just geared to those North Stars. We haven't done that yet. So I think for us, that's kind of the next phase. And I think, it also helps the organization to understand what those North Stars are. I mean, we're a big organization, and sometimes the strategy doesn't make it all the way down the chain. So I think it's also, a great communication piece for our strategy. And then we get very targeted ideas to those North Stars. So I think that's going to happen for us in the next half of the year.
That's great. Linda, thank you so much for sharing all of your insights and your experience and the development of your fast track ideas process. We really appreciate you sharing that experience. Ian, if we can go to the next slide, I just have a couple of wrap-up comments to share. If you found interesting learning about Johnson & Johnson's experience with measuring value, you may also be interested in our upcoming webinar series on employee engagement and innovation and how that's a business imperative for ongoing success. We will have 3 webinars coming up in July, August, and September, exploring the themes around innovation and employee engagement, including the first one revealing insights from our 3rd annual innovation study. The second one will really focus on how-to or best practices in terms of engaging employees in solving business challenges. And then the 3rd one, we will welcome Dan Beeler from Forrester, who will share some guidance around overcoming innovation gaps and driving employee engagement. And so we hope you'll mark your calendar July, August, and September to join us in our ongoing webinar series and with a specific focus on employee engagement and innovation. And with that, I thank you very much. Have a great afternoon.